What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to US Weather Tracker, your number one spot for the deepest dive into everything Mother Nature is throwing our way. It is Saturday night, January 31st, 2026, and we are literally hours away from flipping the page to February, which, spoiler alert, is going to be a wild ride of a week. Tonight, we are zooming in on that massive winter beast currently spinning up right off the coast of the Carolinas. We are going to break down exactly how much powder you can expect to pile up from now through Sunday morning and what that means for your weekend plans. Get ready to bundle up because bone-chilling cold and some seriously dangerous wind chills are about to swallow the entire East Coast. Parents, you definitely want to keep an eye on this. Down in Florida, things are getting weird. We are talking falling iguanas again. Yeah, it is getting cold enough to freeze those lizards right out of the trees. Peeking a bit further down the road, there is another snowmaker diving out of Canada that might dump a whole lot of white stuff on the East Coast next week. I have got a full breakdown of the long-range outlook coming up at the tail end of the video, so stick around, you do not want to miss that. First up, let's talk about this intense low-pressure system that is about to explode over the next 24 hours. We are talking full-on bomb cyclone status. For the weather nerds out there, that means the pressure drops at least 24 millibars in 24 hours, basically. The storm is juicing up incredibly fast. We are seeing a drop of 1 to 2 millibars every single hour, which is just absolutely bonkers speed for a storm system. Right now, that center of circulation is sitting just off the North Carolina coast with a pressure of 996 millibars, and it is booking it north and east. Come Sunday at noon, we expect that pressure to crash all the way down to 974 millibars as it skirts the northeast. After that, it'll slide past Nova Scotia sitting around 969 millibars, though some computer models are suggesting it could bottom out near 950. Just for context, 950 millibars puts you in the ballpark of a Category 2 or even a weak Category 3 hurricane. That gives you an idea of the raw power we are dealing with here, even if it is a winter beast instead of a tropical one. The main difference? Tropical storms eat warm water for breakfast, while these bomb cyclones feed off the clash between hot and cold air masses. But make no mistake, both of them will wreck your day with howling winds and heavy precip, whether that falls as rain or snow. With this particular monster, we are looking at piles of snow, gusts that could knock you over, and whiteout conditions that make driving a nightmare. Let's shift gears and look at the latest alert map coming straight from the National Weather Service. If you see pink on your screen, that is a winter storm warning, and it is covering a huge chunk of the Carolinas and stretching into northeast Georgia. That zone also grabs southern Virginia, where the snow is still expected to stack up pretty high over the next few hours. I have seen the comments about that dry air cutting into the storm. Hang tight, I am going to tackle that in just a second. Those lighter purple shades wrapping around the pink, those are winter weather advisories, basically the storm's light version. It might not shut down the city, but you are still looking at slick roads and some pretty dicey driving conditions. Now, eyes on that purple stretch running from the Texas coast, through the Louisiana Bayou, all the way over to Georgia and Alabama. Basically, all of Florida is lit up too. These are freeze warnings for folks who definitely did not sign up for freezing temps. When the mercury dips below freezing down there, that is when you get that falling iguana situation I teased earlier. Since they are cold-blooded, once it hits 40 or 45 degrees Fahrenheit, they just stiffen up and tumble right out of the branches. Don't worry, they aren't dead. They are just in a lizard coma and will wake up grumpy once the sun comes out. All right. Let's zoom back in on what is happening on the ground in the Carolinas right now. You guys are flooding the comments with reports. I am seeing 8 inches here, 10 inches there. Some spots have already smashed past the 1 foot mark, and the flakes are not stopping anytime soon. I know folks near Wilmington are seeing some dry slots where the snow just kind of shut off for a bit. Raleigh is seeing some of that too, but the models say that gap is going to fill right back in as we head deeper into the night. That pause in the action is caused by sinking air from way up high. Fancy word for it is subsidence. But as this storm winds up and pulls in more moisture, those dry patches are going to get crushed. We are talking heavy bands setting up, potentially dropping more than an inch of snow every single hour. That intensity is going to roll right through the early morning hours of Sunday, so expect the ground to get covered fast. By the time you are waking up around 7 or 8 a.m. Sunday, most of the action will be sliding off the Outer Banks. Myrtle Beach and Wilmington might just have a few lingering flakes flying around by then. I am betting that the snow shuts down pretty quick as that super dry Arctic air punches in from the backside. That Arctic blast isn't just killing the snow, it is bringing some serious cold that we will chat about later in the show. Heads up, Massachusetts, this system might graze you too, specifically around Cape Cod tomorrow morning and afternoon. South of Boston, especially out on the Cape, you could easily pick up a couple of inches as this thing tracks north. This thing is going to hang around until Sunday evening before it finally decides to quit the East Coast completely. Now, let's talk about the bonus round, the fresh powder landing right on top of what you've already got piled up outside. For the folks on the Outer Banks, you're not done yet. We're looking at several more inches, potentially stacking up 6 to 8 inches in some spots. Upstate South Carolina, keep those shovels handy because you could see another 4 to 7 inches dumping down over the next few hours. Those are some serious numbers, especially for a region that usually shuts everything down over a mild frost, let alone a storm like this. Over in far eastern Georgia, you might catch an additional inch or so nothing compared to your northern neighbors, but still enough to make a mess. Heading up toward Cape Cod in Massachusetts, the models are showing about 1 to 2 inches, dusting things up from mid-morning through early evening. If you are in eastern Massachusetts, your window for this white stuff is pretty tight, mostly mid-morning tomorrow until the early evening hours. Keep in mind, computers aren't psychic. These numbers come from models, so expect a few curveballs as the system actually evolves. But one thing is crystal clear. The coastal Carolinas are getting hammered with a major snow event, and there is no way around that. You might want to gas up the snowblower and keep the flashlights handy, because power outages are definitely on the menu for the hardest hit zones. It is no surprise that with a low-pressure center dropping this fast, the wind is going to be a major player in this messy setup. This system is spinning up at breakneck speed, squeezing that pressure gradient tight and generating some absolutely gnarly winds. If you are on the Outer Banks of North Carolina, brace yourselves, because those winds are going to be screaming out of the north like a freight train. We could easily see gusts topping 40 to 50 miles per hour, which isn't just breezy, that is wind capable of breaking things. Winds that strong won't let the snow stay put. They are going to whip it around violently, creating classic blowing and drifting conditions. That is going to tank visibility, which makes driving an absolute nightmare for anyone trying to hit the road Sunday morning. If you were planning on heading to Sunday service or brunch, maybe think twice. The Lord will understand if you stay safe at home. Looking at the radar this evening, those dark gray and black ominous colors are popping up, meaning visibility is under half a mile in a lot of areas. Some spots are practically blind, with visibility under a quarter mile. And yes, full-blown whiteout conditions are happening right now. A whiteout is basically nature's way of putting a blindfold on you. Heavy snow meets high wind, and suddenly the world disappears. It is arguably the absolute worst weather to drive in, so I strongly suggest you just stay on the couch. Don't expect it to clear up soon. It is going to be soupy all evening and past midnight, particularly for eastern North Carolina and northeastern South Carolina. By the time we get to mid or late Sunday morning, things should slowly start to clear up along the Carolina coast. Cape Cod, don't get cocky though. You have got your turn coming with strong winds and that lovely horizontal snow for a stretch. Heading into tomorrow afternoon, Cape Cod visibility could also tank below half a mile at certain times. So heads up there. Toss the snow, the wind, and the freezing temps into a blender, and you have got a recipe for a seriously dangerous situation for these towns. This storm isn't just taking a vacation after it leaves the U.S., it is headed straight to Canada to cause some trouble there too. We don't ignore our neighbors to the north here, and Nova Scotia is sadly smack in the bullseye of this beast. You guys in Nova Scotia are looking at potential blizzard conditions starting Sunday evening and dragging right into Monday morning. Just to be technical, a blizzard isn't just a lot of snow. You need winds of at least 35 miles per hour sustained for 3 hours. You also need visibility to drop below a quarter mile from falling or blowing snow to earn that official blizzard badge. This system is going to deliver snowfall rates of 1 to 2 inches an hour for central and eastern Nova Scotia, which piles up fast. Go a bit west and it lightens up slightly. But don't laugh, it is still enough to bury your driveway. See those tight lines on the map? Those represent a massive pressure squeeze, which translates directly to howling winds. expect total whiteouts in Nova Scotia, making travel not just hard, but basically a suicide mission. The good news is, things start to calm down Monday evening as the system finally drifts off east into the Atlantic. We could see over a foot of snow in eastern Nova Scotia, with some lucky or unlucky spots nearing 20 inches. That is a massive amount of snow, even for you tough Canadians, so expect local life to be disrupted for a bit. Now here is a wild part of this storm, the ocean waves generated by that angry wind and low pressure. A few hundred miles off the mid-Atlantic coast, waves are jacking up to around 40 feet. That is basically a 4-story building of water. If you are on a boat out there, 40-foot waves are terrifying and pose a serious danger to any vessel. Luckily for the landlubbers in Nova Scotia, these monster waves are staying a bit south of the coastline. Here is the kicker. Those waves are going to surf all the way across the pond and hit Europe late next week. Around February 5th, Europe gets a souvenir from our winter storm in the form of some massive swells rolling in. Here is a prime example of how Mother Nature likes to play dominoes. One nudge over here causes chaos across the globe. Jumping over to our next headache, the northern plains are getting hammered with some fresh powder right this second. We are talking about a solid blanket of white covering eastern Nebraska, the Dakotas, and sliding right into western Minnesota. That mess is going to spread out across Minnesota tonight and linger into early Sunday, so get your shovels ready. Big hubs like the Twin Cities and Duluth are in the crosshairs, along with our friends over near Bismarck, North Dakota. Dropping down the map a bit, expect flakes to fly in the La Crosse area, plus Des Moines and Waterloo down in Iowa. By the time you are finishing Sunday brunch, that system pushes into Madison, Rockford, and over to Peoria, Illinois. Even the Windy City gets in on the action when this clipper breezes through Chicago later on Sunday afternoon. Now, don't panic, this is not the storm of the century, just a classic clipper dropping a manageable dusting on the Midwest. They call them clippers because they sail down from Canada in a hurry, just like those fast ships from back in the day. You are looking at a quick coat of paint on the grass, maybe an inch here or there, nothing to write home about. But don't get cocky, because even a little bit of slush can make the roads a total nightmare if you are not paying attention. Sidewalks are going to be slicker than grease, especially up in northern Minnesota, where it is cold enough to turn everything into an ice rink. Some lucky spots north of the Twin Cities might wake up to 2 inches of fresh fluff by Monday morning. Alright, enough about snow, let's talk about the real villain in this story, that bone-chilling Arctic blast. Check out this setup. Our low-pressure system is diving way further south than we usually see, even for early February. Come tomorrow morning, that trough is basically vacationing right over Florida, which is just plain weird. We are talking about the coldest air of the entire season, and not just for the Northeast. Florida is about to freeze too. Let's look at the wind chill, because that is the number that actually makes you want to stay in bed. Tonight is going to be brutal. We are seeing Goosebump City with sub-zero feels across most of the east. When it gets below zero, that is dangerous territory. Frostbite can grab you before you even realize you are cold. By Sunday morning, Tallahassee is looking at wind chills in the single digits. Yeah, you heard that right. Gainesville, Orlando, Jacksonville, and the Big Bend, you are all joining the single-digit club. Welcome to the freezer. For the folks down in the Sunshine State, this is shock to the system level cold that nobody signed up for. Tampa and Naples are dipping into the teens, bad news for beach days, and even worse news for the orange crops. Even all the way down in Miami and Key West, it is going to feel like the mid-20s or mid-30s. Insane. This is a massive plunge of Arctic air crashing the party way further south than it is usually invited. Meanwhile, back north, the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley are just shivering in their usual sub-zero misery. It stays ugly all Sunday, so if you absolutely have to go out, make sure you look like the Michelin Man. Layer up, cover every inch of skin, and honestly, just stay inside with some hot cocoa if you can. Keep an eye on the kiddos and grandma. This kind of deep freeze does not mess around with the vulnerable folks. And please, bring Fido inside. If you are cold in a coat, your dog is definitely freezing out there. Be a good neighbor, knock on a door or two, and make sure everyone is surviving the deep freeze okay. All right, let's gaze into the crystal ball and see when the next snowmaker is arriving late next week. Fast forward to 7 a.m. on Thursday, February 5th, and we can see some new trouble brewing on the map. What you see here is vorticity at 500 millibars, basically the atmosphere's way of winding up a pitch. See those bright colors? That is serious spin, and it usually means a storm is cooking something up in the kitchen. That ball of energy is sliding southeast from Canada and aiming straight for the Great Lakes next week. Look at that swirl tightening up like a cinnamon roll. That is a classic sign that the cyclone means business. It is dragging cold air with it and promises to dump snow on a whole lot of backyards as it rolls through. All week long, expect the lakes to fire up the snow machines as that cold air hits the warmer water. We might see a wimpy little system dusting the mid-Atlantic between Monday and Tuesday, but nothing major. The main event is another Alberta Clipper diving down as we head into Friday, February 6th. That one could blanket the Great Lakes with some decent pockets of snow, enough to break out the shovels again. Out west, where it is a bit milder, you are probably looking at a slushy, messy mix instead of the pretty white stuff. We are talking a nasty cocktail of snow, sleet, and freezing rain that turns highways into absolute skating rinks. That messy system is set to slide right on down into the mid-Atlantic and northeast, dumping the white stuff as it goes. Folks in the Appalachians and West Virginia better grab their shovels because this storm could drop some serious powder. The latest European computer model is hinting at a decent dusting a few inches for the Great Lakes and our neighbors up north. But look at the West Virginia mountains. We are seeing potential for over 6 inches, maybe even half a foot in the high country. The American GFS model is acting like a total drama queen, predicting way heavier snowfall for the central Appalachians. When the computer models fight like this, it just means the crystal ball is still a little foggy this far out. We will be keeping an eagle eye on this thing as it takes shape next week, about 7 days from now. All right, let us switch gears and look at the big picture, the temperature roller coaster for the next few weeks. That bone-chilling Arctic air in the southeast is finally going to mellow out between February 1st and the 8th. So even though you are freezing right now, that air mass is going to lose its bite as it hangs out down south. Meanwhile, we have got some mild Pacific vibes cruising across western Canada and the western United States. You will really feel it from the plains out to the west coast, thanks to a massive ridge of high pressure parking itself there. That high pressure bubble means drier skies and warmer temps than usual for early February. Now, let us get a little nerdy with the teleconnections, those big atmospheric patterns that pull the strings on our weather. Heading into the middle of the month, most of our indicators are sitting right on the fence in neutral territory. That keeps things interesting for the Pacific Northwest, giving us more variety than just plain old warm weather. By mid to late February, the door might creak open for cold air again as the Eastern Pacific Oscillation hovers around neutral. When that index flips positive, it basically rolls out the red carpet for chilly air to invade the west, which has been rare lately. The other big player here is the polar vortex. Yeah, the big bad wolf of winter weather systems high up in the atmosphere. It is currently splitting into 2 separate chunks, which is a huge deal in the world of long-range forecasting. One chunk is hanging out over Europe or Asia, and the other piece is drifting right over North America. Usually, when the vortex splits like a bad breakup, it takes about 2 weeks for that cold air to leak down to us. That freezing air eventually crashes the party at ground level, which lines up perfectly for mid-February. It is some complex science mumbo-jumbo, but the bottom line is it changes the weather you feel on your face. Now, for the second week of February, do you guys remember what I told you 7 days ago about the warm-up? I said once we hit early February, the thermometer was going to start climbing. See, when Mother Nature blasts the east with a deep freeze for a week straight, she usually tries to balance the scales. After a long shiverfest, you almost always get a rapid temperature spike. It is like the atmosphere snapping back. I am betting that warm snap hits us hard between the 8th and 15th of February. We are going to thaw out and actually enjoy some decent mild weather for a change. But do not go packing away your heavy coats just yet, because winter has a nasty surprise waiting in the wings. The cold air is just reloading its batteries up near the Arctic, gathering strength for round 2. From the 15th to the 22nd, that cold air is booking a one-way ticket straight from Russia. We are talking a Siberian express train barreling down through Canada and into the central and eastern states. It is going to plunge all the way to the Gulf Coast, hitting folks who really are not built for this kind of cold. I mean, we are looking at freezing temps for the Texas coast, northern Mexico, and even northern Florida. Bring in your plants! And this cold guest likes to overstay its welcome, lingering well into the last week of the month, through the 28th. The East Coast especially might get stuck in the freezer thanks to how the jet stream is setting up. But heads up, even the Pacific Northwest might catch a shiver or two this time around. States like Montana and Wyoming, which have been oddly mild, are finally going to join the winter party. It is going to be a rude awakening for those areas after such an easygoing winter so far. Now, let us talk about the fun stuff snow chances as we roll into the first part of February. Early on, watch out for fast-moving clipper systems from Canada and potential storms brewing off the East Coast. Those nor'easters are the big dogs, massive storms that can bury the major cities under a mountain of snow. Now, looking at the window from the 8th through the 15th of February, the West is gearing up for another round of serious mountain powder. Basically, we are expecting a trough to dig in out west, inviting low pressure and moisture to crash the party. And you know the drill. Low pressure in that region creates a conveyor belt for storms, meaning the ski resorts are going to be happy. Over on the East Coast, however, a ridge might park itself nearby, acting like a bouncer that keeps most of the storm systems away. If that pattern holds, the East stays relatively dry until we roll into the third week of February. That is the moment things start getting spicy for anyone who loves a good blizzard. My gut tells me there is a significant winter wallop brewing for the central and eastern United States around that third week. This system is going to ride the front wave of that nasty Arctic and Siberian air we talked about. When you smash that freezing air into warmer currents, you get the perfect ingredients for a blockbuster winter storm. Calling the exact landing spot this early is like trying to nail jelly to a wall, but the Northeast has a giant target on its back. The Northeast could get buried under heavy snow during the home stretch of the month, from the 22nd to the 28th. We are about a month out, so we will keep watching this like a hawk to refine the details. The computer models are a bit fuzzy now, but will sharpen up as we get closer, so keep coming back for the real scoop. Late February has a reputation for dropping massive snow bombs on the Northeast, so this fits the history books perfectly. That wraps up our deep dive into what is happening now and what is lurking around the corner. Just a reminder, that current winter beast is still active and will be hammering the Carolinas for the next few hours. If you are in the danger zone, seriously, just stay home and binge watch some television instead of driving. The polar plunge coming behind this storm is just as dangerous, so ensure your family is prepped for the deep freeze. Wear layers like an onion, cover your skin, and check on your neighbors to make sure they are not turning into popsicles. Florida folks, wrap those pipes and bring in the sensitive plants, unless you want them to turn into ice sculptures. We will keep our eyes glued to the data and update you the second the atmosphere decides to make a move. Thanks for tuning in to US Weather Tracker, where we obsess over the weather so you do not have to. Stay safe, stay toasty, and have a fantastic rest of your weekend.